Torah and Leadership, Nugget 5, Abraham Part 3. Most people, when they reach their 70th birthday, start thinking about slowing down, sometimes even 60. I met an elder who rather seemed to be speeding up, so I asked him why that is. His response: when we get to 60, 65, 70, and above, we start seeing the door begin to close. And I have so much to do before the door closes that the older I get, the harder I have to work. The moment he said that, it brought me to Abraham, because something like that is the impression we get of Abraham. We know that Sarah, Abraham's constant companion throughout their journey, dies in Genesis 23. He is 137 years old. That is Abraham. We see him mourn Sarah's death, and then he moves into action. He engages in an elaborate negotiation to buy a plot of land in which to bury his dead, his wife, beloved wife, Sarah. As the narrative makes clear, this is not a simple task. He confesses to the local people, the Hittites, the son of Heth, that he is an immigrant and a resident among them. Genesis 23, verses 4. Meaning that he knows he has no right to buy land. It would take a special concession on their part for him to do so. The Hittites politely but firmly try to discourage him. He has no need to buy a burial plot, they say. No one amongst us will deny you his burial site to bury your dead. Genesis 23:6. He can bury Sarah in someone else's graveyard. Equally politely, but no less insistently, Abraham makes it clear that he is determined to buy land. In the end, he pays a highly inflated price, 400 silver shekels, to do so. The purchase of the cave of Machpelah is evidently a highly significant event because it is recorded in great detail and highly legal terminology. Not just here, but the 3 times it shows up in Genesis. Genesis 25:9, Genesis 49:30, and then Genesis 50:13. Each time with the same formality. Here, for instance, is Jacob on his deathbed speaking to his sons. Genesis 29. And he commanded them and said to them, I will be brought into my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which field Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite for burial property. 32. The purchase of the field and the cave therein was from the sons of Heth. Something significant is being hinted here. Otherwise, why mention each time exactly where the field is and whom Abraham bought it from? Immediately after the story of the land purchase, we read, and Abraham was old, Genesis 24, advanced in days, and the Lord had blessed Abraham with everything. Again, This sounds like the end of a life, not a preface to a new course of action. And again, our expectation is confounded. Abraham launches into a new initiative, this time to find a suitable wife for his son Isaac, who by now is at least 37 years old. Abraham leaves nothing to chance. He does not speak to Isaac himself, but to his most trusted servant Eliezer, whom he instructs to go to my native land, to my birthplace, Genesis 24:2, and find the appropriate woman. He wants Isaac to have a wife who will share his faith and way of life. Abraham does not specify that she should come from his own family, but this seems to be an assumption hovering in the background. As with the purchase of the field, this course of events is described in more details than almost anything else in the Torah. Every conversational exchange is recorded. The contrast with the story of the binding of Isaac could not be greater. There, almost everything, Abraham's thoughts, Isaac's feelings, is left unsaid. Here, everything is said. Again, the literary style calls our attention to the significance of what is happening, without telling us precisely what it is. The explanation is simple and, like I said, unexpected. Throughout the story of Abraham and Sarah, God promised them two things: children and then land. In the promise of land, Abraham is told, "Rise, walk in the land throughout its breadth and length, for I will give it to you." This is repeated no less than 7 times. The promise of children occurs 4 times. Abraham's descendants will be a great nation, Genesis 12:2. As many as the dust of the earth, Genesis 13:16. And the stars of the skies, Genesis 15:5. He will be a father, not of one nation, but of many, Genesis 17:5. Despite this, when Sarah dies, Abraham has not a single inch of the land that he can call his own, and has only one child who will continue the covenant, which is Isaac, currently unmarried. Neither promise has been fulfilled. Hence the extraordinary detail of these 2 main stories: the purchase of the land and then the finding of a wife for Isaac. There is a moral here, and the Torah slows down the speed of the narrative so that we will not miss the point. God promises, but we have to act. God promised Abraham the land, but he had to buy the first field. God promised Abraham many descendants, but Abraham had to ensure that his son was married, and to a woman who would share the life of the covenant, so that Abraham would have, as we say today, Hebrew grandchildren. Despite all the promises, God does not and will not do it alone. God creates space for human freedom. He gives us responsibility, and only by exercising it do we reach our full stature as human beings. God saved Noah from the flood, but Noah had to make the ark. He gave the land of Israel to the people of Israel, but they had to fight the battles. God gives us the strength to act, but we have to do the deed. What changes the world? What fulfills our destiny is not what God does for us, but what we do for God. That is what leadership understands. That is what leaders understand. It is what made Abraham the first Hebrew leader. Leaders take responsibility for creating the conditions through which God's purposes can be fulfilled. They are not passive, but active, even in old age, like Abraham. Though actions take energy, it also gives us energy. The contrast between Noah in old age and Abraham in old age could not be greater. One of the most important lessons we learn here is this. The promise of a land, countless children, become real through small beginnings. Leaders begin with an envisioned future, but they also know that there is a long journey between here and there. We can only reach it one act at a time, one day at a time. There is no miraculous shortcut, and if there were, it would not help. The use of shortcuts could culminate in an achievement like Jonah's gourd, which grew overnight and then died overnight. Abraham acquired only a single field and had just one son who would continue the covenant. Yet he did not complain, and he died serene and satisfied because he had begun. Because he had left future generations something on which to build. All great change is the work of more than one generation, and none of us will live to see the full fruit of our endeavors. I repeat that. All great change is the work of more than one generation, and none of us will live to see the full fruit of our endeavors. Leaders see the destination, begin the journey, and leave behind them those who will continue it. That is enough to endow a life with immortality.